Check, check, check. Check. Mic check. 1 2 1 2. Guess this mic is jumping. I see the avatar jumping. How's everybody doing, man? Y'all ready for that beat? Hey. Anyway, what up, what up, what up, what up? Might seem like it's cool. I know ain't nobody gonna be jumping up in this thing when I first turn on. I ain't got it like that yet. You know what I'm saying? I gotta talk to myself for a second, man. You know what I'm saying? But those who are either live or catch this playback, man, I appreciate you tuning in. This is Brother Lawrence 228, representing that Gulf Coast. You know, we down here on that dirty water, eating crawfish and shit. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about? And we got a nice show today, I believe. We're talking about the city where I was raised mostly. And that's in Pascagoula. 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 I remember playing baseball, right? We look, you know what I'm saying, Little League. We used to have this chant. We were like G-O, G-O-U-L-A, let's go. Oh man, shout out to all my baseball homies, man. Fun times. You know, I remember them. We were good. We were whipping up on it. We were hitting dingers and shit. We hit dingers on it, man. You know what I'm saying? Clean. It's gone. You knew it from the sound. So when the ball hit the bat, you knew it was gone. See ya. See ya. We knocking out the park. You know, but you know what I'm saying? We'll get into some of those stories. I have some cool and some not so cool stories about Little League baseball. You know what I'm saying? And being on the black kid on the all-star team, my division, because you had like the American side and you had the Nationals. You see how they play that out? In the Dixie Youth League. We'll get into that, man. But today, you know, even all that was in the city of Pascagoula, who I say is majority white. I don't know the numbers, but that's what it feel like, you know, growing up. And we had our little section in Carver Village. That was my hood. Rest in peace to the Ville. Rest in peace to the Ville. Shout out to everybody from the village too. A lot of my ancestors came through there. And you know, it is what it is. It's no longer there. Probably shouldn't be. Probably to force our people to get right. You know, and that's how life works. Usually forced into not necessarily doing the right thing, but you know what I'm saying, to give you that the opportunity to get the opportunity to live a better life. Sometimes bad stuff will probably have to happen in order for you to get into that position. Am I making sense? Sometimes when you try to take that step forward, like if you was in a situation, aka the hood, when it seemed like you could never get out, you go through the cycle over and over and over again, 5 years, turn to 10 years, you know what I'm saying? You can't get up out there. You might could take a trip, but you may think that that's all you know. That's how you become a product of your environment. And usually your environment kind of stay put until somebody come and, you know, force you out, or a disaster or some kind of pandemic or something. Yeah, people will stand up though, man. You know, um, that's gonna be a little bit for another show. But we talking about the Gulf Coast, particularly Pascagoula, Mississippi. Okay, of course that name sound like it's indigenous, Pascagoula. Yeah, because you have the Pascagoula Indians, you have the Biloxi Indians, you have the people who coastal civilizations who met the European. What about them? Indigenous, Aboriginal, Indian, we're here. We're already here. So in this particular bill, I want to hit. I want for us understanding their fight and being recognized. Okay, um, I got a few vids. To kind of tell it from how the paperwork say, and how the tribe actually used the paperwork to prove that they are a distinct people, that they are a part of his story, that they are a part of his story. So some of you might not care about the paperwork, and that's cool. And that, as long as you know, that should be good for you. Hope you're doing something with it, but just continue to be yourself and build with others and like-minded people who may believe that they have in their family and can prove it, and everything is all set for them. But it's not all set for everybody. It's a lot of people that just got question marks. You know what I'm saying? Doors still, up that need to be knocked down. So these videos that I'm about to, show to you, we're going to look at what the Dawes Commission say about the Pascagoula River tribe. Now, how I got in contact, of course, I'm doing my genealogy, and I'm starting from Pascagoula, where I'm at, and I work my way around. I kind of understand where I'm at and how. If we're talking about indigenous, not even get into the genealogy part, but just knowing where you at in the history of where you know what I'm saying, where you at, where you from first, and how what I'm saying, your family came about into that area, and then working your way, what I'm saying, backwards. So I'm from Pigula. You know what I'm saying? And it's a little bit, um, you know, about the city. Let's check it out.
In 1830, the Choctaws of Mississippi signed the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, which called for the removal of the Choctaw Nation from the state. Under the terms of the treaty, those Choctaws that did not want to be removed could remain in the state and receive individual plots of land, but they had to become citizens of the state. In 1902, the Department of the Interior sent the Dawes Commission to Meridian, Mississippi to find Choctaws that remained in the state but did not receive their land. Ancestors of the Pascagoula River tribe traveled to Meridian, Mississippi in 1902 to meet with the Dawes Commission to seek land from the federal government as Choctaws. In the end, the Office of Indian Affairs and the Department of the Interior denied these ancestors of the Pascagoula River tribe land under the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek because their ancestors in 1830 did not sign the removal treaty. Their ancestors were not on the Choctaw removal roll or any other Choctaw roll. Their ancestors had never tried to claim land in the 19th century as Choctaws, and their ancestors had never lived in central Mississippi within the Choctaw Nation. This presentation looks at primary documents from 1902 and 1903. In these documents, the Dawes Commission interviews Edmo Bang. The Dawes Commission concludes that Edmo Bang and his tribal community were not Choctaw, but they were probably Native American. Edmo Bang was one of 5 elders that traveled to Meridian.
My bad. So they may not be Choctaw, but they still may be indigenous. Okay, may not be Choctaw, but still may. I don't know how to take that as either Choctaw's not Native American or they're another indigenous entity, or you know, Pascagoula is the Native American.
In Mississippi, along with a host of other people from their tribal community to try to get land from their tribe. The other elders were Edward Bang, Anton Ely, Joe Garlick, and Frederick Bobinger. The Dawes Commission chose to consolidate the cases of all the other members of the tribe under the names of the 4 elders, Edmo Bang, Joe Garlick, and Frederick Bobinger. Edward Bang's case was probably consolidated with Edmo Bang's case because he was closely related to Edmo Bang and was younger than Edmo Bang. The Dawes Commission then chose to consider all 4 consolidated cases together because all 4 groups were intermarried with each other and combined they constituted a distinct tribal community. On this page, you can see the intent of the interview. The Dawes Commission is considering Edmo Bang's claim to be identified as a Mississippi Choctaw. Also note the other cases consolidated with Edmo Bang's case, including Edward Bang's case. This page shows the beginning of the Dawes Commission's interview of Edmo Bang. The attorney, J.R. Holcomb, was present to assist the members of the Pascagoula River tribe in their efforts to gain land from the federal government. As you look at the questions asked of Edmo Bang, you can see the focus of the Dawes Commission centered on the percentage of Choctaw blood he and his parents claimed, and where he and his parents had lived. The Dawes Commission seeks to find out if Edmo Bang and his parents ever lived in central Mississippi within the Choctaw Confederacy. The testimony Bang provides shows that he and his parents always lived on the coast in Jackson County, Mississippi, and they could not have participated in the removal process. If you notice, he claims to be 3/4 Choctaw blood. Also, if you notice, his parents, he claims both of his parents lived in Jackson County, Mississippi, their entire life. Finally, if you notice, he does claim that his father spoke Choctaw, but he did not. After the Dawes Commission asked Bang about whether or not he could speak Choctaw, they begin to ask about his parents' parents or his grandparents. And he gives them the best answers that he can. But on the whole, what he can tell them is that they probably lived in Jackson County as well. After that, they move on to Edmo Bang's wife, and they ask him similar questions to what they asked him similar questions about her and her family as to what they asked him about his family. And the answers are very similar. Her ancestors lived in Jackson County. They had a certain degree of blood, Choctaw blood, but none of them were full blood. When you consider this line of questioning, you can see that the Dawes Commission is looking for the names of the tribe's ancestors to compare them with the Choctaw removal roll and other rolls associated with the Choctaws. The Dawes Commission is trying to discover if anyone in the tribe speaks Choctaw in 1902. That's their second agenda. The Dawes Commission will eventually use the fact that members in this tribal community could not speak Choctaw in 1902 as further proof that the tribe was not Choctaw and not entitled to land or other benefits from the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek. The next stage of the interview moves towards the commission explaining to Edmo Bang what Article 14 consisted of. In this situation, they're trying to explain to Edward Bang that he is claiming land under Article 14, and they want to make certain that he knows that what Article 14 entails. Specifically, in 1830, individual Choctaws, after the signing of the treaty, had two choices. Any Choctaw in Mississippi in 1830 could choose to stay in the state of Mississippi, but if they stayed in Mississippi, they could no longer be members of the Choctaw Nation. They would be citizens of the state of Mississippi.
They'll be citizens of the state of Mississippi. So that's what happened when your people didn't, go to Oklahoma. When our people didn't go to Oklahoma, they stayed. They chose not to come, and was really disowned by the Choctaw that left. You know, some of them in Philadelphia, Mississippi, where they headquarters. Well, that's for Mississippi Choctaw. Oklahoma's Choctaw Nation. Difference but linked. You know, you got Alabama bands of Mississippi Choctaw. You got Louisiana bands of Mississippi Choctaw. You even stretch out into Texas. You know? But yeah, we my folk like became citizens. So that's why they are able to be enumerated. That's because they became citizens, so they own paper, right? And they still contain the blood. That's what, and then you start getting into these misclassifications of who your ancestors were to make it all confusing for you to find the truth. That's what I think is interesting. That's what I feel like it is, it's fun to kind of figure this crap out. And it's right there and everybody missing it. They starting that people free, man. They African. Come on, man. What Boosie say? Come on, man. Come on, dog. Like, no. They were some that were African, but not all freedmen were African. African. So you got to watch it when you know, when you go in that direction. Okay, because we had some of our own enslaved. We had some of the tribes enslaved or held hostage when in war, right? You got to account for all that. So you can't paint, you know what I'm saying? You can't make a blanket statement, basically. You know what I'm saying? Painting us all in the same, as the same. Uh, it was all mixed up. That's when the gumbo really started.
Or they could move with the Choctaw Nation to the Indian Territory out west and still be citizens of the Choctaw Nation. The Dawes Commission makes sure that Edmo Bang understands he is applying for land under Article 14. On this page, you see the specifics of how a Choctaw can claim land in Mississippi and become a citizen of the state of Mississippi. Specifically, what has to happen is a head of household has to go to the federal agent and request land. And there is an agent assigned to Mississippi to do this specifically. It's a very detailed process. The, the act of having to go to the federal agent and claim the land as a Choctaw is further proof of the person's being Choctaw. Because Edmo Bang's family and his ancestors never went to federal agents to claim land, eventually the Dawes Commission will use this fact against them in their decision. Finally, when it's all said and done and they've read the Article 14 to him, they ask Edmo Bang if his ancestors abided by Article 14, because they're setting Edmo Bang up to deny him land because his ancestors did not apply for land because they were not Choctaw. And you can see the question. Now, did any of your ancestors or any of your wife's ancestors ever do as that 14th article required that a Choctaw should do here 71 years ago when this treaty was made, in case he desired to stay here and become citizen of the states and take land and not move out west? His answer is no, sir. Do you know whether or not they did or not? They ask him again. Basically, they're badgering him. His answer, they never done it. No, sir. Then they ask him again, what makes you think they didn't do it? His answer is, they never went away from here. I don't know. I can't go any farther back than I know. I forgets a heap. In this situation, you see them badgering Edmo Bang, but they're 3 times they're asking him. They're trying to confirm that his ancestors never actually made the effort to acquire land. They're trying to be very clear and distinct here so that when they draw the line and say that they are not Choctaw, that he's given them the answers they need to disprove his claim as being Mississippi Choctaw. Finally, the Dawes Commission concludes this section by when they ask him if the federal government provided any benefits to his or his wife's ancestors or any land to his or his wife's ancestors. Bang replied that he just did not know, and this seals their fate. The Dawes Commission uses his testimony to rule that he and his wife are not Choctaw and are not entitled to land or benefits under the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek. On this page, you see the consolidated cases under Edmo Bang's name and the final decision. These are the direct ancestors of a good percentage of the Pascagoula River tribe. You can see the beginning of the Davis, Mason, and Waltman lines in the Pascagoula River tribe as you see the names of women born but married men outside the tribe with these last names. As you look at the decision, it becomes clear what's happening. It appears from the record herein that the application for identification as Mississippi Choctaws were made to this commission by Edmo Bangfor himself, his wife, and his 2 minor children. It goes on to list the other people that are involved in this case. And as you see, you can see the consolidation of Celestin Moore, Celestin Davis, Ranson Davis, Martha C. Davis, Mary Jane Waltman, and all their children. And each one of these people that you see named here, they're naming in all their children and or wives if they're married into the tribe, or husbands. On this page, you see a continuation of the list of people being included in this, including Edward Bang and his 8 minor children, Diola, Tanaisi, Rosa, Mandy, Arloni, Ejan, and Edward Bang Jr. Which brings us to our final conclusion. Said commission shall have the authority to determine the identity of Choctaw Indians claiming rights in the Choctaw lands under Article 14 of the treaty between the United States and the Choctaw Nation, concluded September 27, 1830, and to that end may administer oaths, examine witnesses, and perform all other acts necessary thereto, and make report to the Secretary of the Interior. Here, what is being laid out here is the power of the Dawes Commission to make decisions. And so they're establishing their claim to make this decision. They go on to write, it also appears that all the applicants claim rights in the Choctaw lands under Article 14 of the treaty between the United States. Goes on to repeat these. And then they list the name of the ancestor, the names of the ancestors that Edmo Bang is using to claim land as a Choctaw. They list Ejan Bang, Rose Bang, Ladner, Elizabeth or Ellis Ely. They go on to list Pierre Ladner and Mandy Thomas. Also Pug Bang. All of these are the names that the Dawes Commission is going to use to go back and try to compare these names to what's on the Choctaw rosters. In looking at the ancestors that Edmo Bang has listed as being Choctaw to the commission states, it further appears from the evidence submitted in support of said applications and from the recommendation of the commission that none of said applicants has ever been enrolled by the Choctaw tribal authorities as a member of the Choctaw tribe or admitted to Choctaw citizenship by a duly constituted court or committee of the Choctaw Nation, or by the Commission to the 5 Civilized Tribes, or by a decree of the United States Court in Indian Territory under the provisions of the Act of Congress approved June 10th, 1896. Basically, they're stating here that none of these ancestors that Edmo Bang and the other people listed with Edmo Bang claim to be Choctaw are actually Choctaw. They don't appear on any of the rolls. We get to the final decision of the Dawes Commission. And what you have stated here, it is therefore the opinion of this commission. The evidence herein is insufficient to determine the identity of Edmo Bang, Celestine Bang, Lewis Moore, Celestine Moore, et al. And it goes on and lists everybody that's been consolidated with Edmo Bang's case. And it says that there is insufficient to determine the identity of Edmo Bang et al. As Choctaw Indians entitled to the rights in the Choctaw lands under the provisions of said Article 14 of the Treaty of 1830, and that the application for their identification as such should be refused and is so ordered. And it's signed by Tams Bigme, T.B. Needles, and C.R. Breckenridge. These are the 3 commissioners on the Dawes Commission. And this is done on April 17th, 1903.
Let's go.
What does this mean? This means that the commission decided that Edmo Bang and all the people associated with Edmo Bang in this court case are not Choctaw. Dawes Commission rules that these ancestors of the Pascagoula River tribe were not Choctaw, it does demonstrate that these people and their immediate ancestors had always lived in Jackson County, Mississippi. This fact provides direct evidence that the federal government knew and knows that the Pascagoula River tribe has ancestral roots that stretch back to the 18th century. The Dawes Commission also states that the tribal community in 1902 had Native American ancestry. The reason the Dawes Commission does not find any evidence that these elders of the Pascagoula River tribe were Choctaw is because the ancestors of the Pascagoula River tribe never had any direct connections to the Choctaw Confederacy during the entire existence of the United States as a country, up to when the Dawes Commission submitted its report in 1903. The people from Jackson County, Mississippi, led by the elders Edmo Bang, Edward Bang, Anton Ely, Joe Garlick, and Frederick Bobinger, and mission in Meridian, Mississippi in 1902, were descendants of the historic Pascagoula tribe. Even though these interviews in 1902 prove that the Pascagoula River tribe is not Choctaw, the interviews prove that the ancestors of the tribe lived in Jackson County, Mississippi, on the coast throughout the 19th century, that the Dawes Commission believed that this tribal community had Native American ancestry, and that the Dawes Commission defined these people as a distinct community separate from its white and black neighbors in Jackson County. Therefore, today, the Pascagoula River tribe cannot claim to be Choctaw in the eyes of the federal government, but it can prove that it is a distinct tribal community separate from its black and white neighbors in southeast Mississippi with ancestral roots from the historic Pascagoula tribe.
Yeah. So there you have it. I forgot a brother name. I was, copy his name down so I can give him credit. I'm not trying to pass this on as if it was mine. This is not my research. I just came across this and thought y'all would probably, like to hear about how some of these cases are going, and how some of us got it and got to give it up to be able to get what we want. We're going to have to go against the grain. We're going to have to fight the system. You have to go through the system. So, figure out how to use the system against itself. Use the documents that your ancestors left for you. Those are the breadcrumbs, the jewels that we need to be picking up. And it's probably in these courthouses. I'm gonna bring on some lawyers, man, and, to come talk to y'all and see how, what they can bring to the table to kind of figure this thing out. Because we are talking about law. Should I know? Should I get an attorney? What? Who should I get to talk about this indigenous law? All right. How y'all feeling, man? Y'all all right? Y'all all right? Man, you don't mind, appreciate you tuning in. But smash that like button right now. Hit that like button. If you like what you're hearing so far, but that's on paper, man. But just because they're not child doesn't mean just because you're not a part of the 5 civilized tribes, there are more tribes outside of that. And this is a distinct group who are fighting for their identity. Excuse me. 1, 2, 3. All right, let me get this off there. Whoa. There we go. So now, with that being said, man, we understand, what I'm saying, where they're coming from, to prove how they Aboriginal. mm, to prove that you are a descendant from the Aboriginal people who were here, always been here on this land before the arrival of the European. Now, it is a strong case, tipping on the fact that white people might have been already over here. You know what I'm saying? In certain sections, and we got to talk about the Bronze Age and all that. You know what I'm saying? We got to talk about that copper, minerals, resources to fuel those Europeans. We got to talk about that. We're gonna talk about that on the episode. We're about that Gouda right now. Um, yeah, so I did. In the beginning of my genealogy journey, right, working back, I'm in Gula. So I'm from Carver Village, right? And the street name was Live Oak, East Live Oak to be exact. And that was my first time growing up hearing of the word Live Oak, right? Like the oak tree. Yeah, but it's indigenous to this area, all across the South, actually. But so when I'm doing my research, right, and I'm looking at native tribes, maybe you know trying to find the people, the Aboriginal people uh, from this part in Pascagoula, and I ran across the Pascagoula River tribe, and they had a live oak school. Right, let me see if I can. Pascagoula River tribe. All right, that's them right there. Let's see if I can. That's them right there. Live Oak School. In 1917, a segregated school was established for Native Americans in Jackson County, Mississippi. Located on Waltman Road, the Live Oak Pond School members of the local Native American community with teachers provided by the state and county. Students were only allowed to complete the eighth grade. In 1950, a new school was built here by the county, known as Live Oak School. It also served as the community center for the descendants of the Pascagoula tribe. The school closed in 1966 as segregation was ending. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I ended up hitting them up. This is back in 2020, last year, March last year, about a year or so ago. Of course, named Greg, yeah. Pascagoula High School, graduate of '02, typically was raised mostly in Pascagoula. This me talking to them. I'm on this journey of tracing my ancestors. People. I got my people with me. I in this city, and I keep them with me. Um, from George County, mostly during the 1900s. It's crazy that I never really heard about natives in history for this particular area. Could you enlighten me with info media documents that I can, you know, can point me to learning more about your tribe? I was raised in Carver Village. They tore it down and built something over, but the street was named Live Oak. All right. So, because I heard about their Live Oak student problem, descendants and family. Right. This is the only time I heard of the word or that particular tree. Ancestry, I got, I think Alabama ancestry. I don't know what that VLA ancestry. I can trace both sides from Georgia to Etowah County, Alabama, which is wrong. It's not Etowah. It's Sumter County, and Mobile County, Chinchula, Alabama, Washington County. I meant to say. We're Tutuda. Got some fam down that way. Got some Choctaws too. You know what I'm saying? Chinchula, Choctaws. Let's see. So they responded and they said, "Good morning. I'm so sorry for the delay. The Live Oak School was always a part of the Indian school's name. There was Live Oak Pond School, and then when they moved the school and built a new one, the name changed to the Indian School, Live Oak Indian Creole School." All right, so we're not talking about food. We talk about mixed people. All right, so this school was located in Van Cleve, Mississippi, country. These children were mixed race. Oh, there we go. You know what I'm saying? They were mixed with white and Indian blood. Right? The locals did not know how to place this group in a race group based on the Jim Crow era. And that's why in another bill that I did, talking about the Creoles in Alabama, how they didn't know how to place those people. They were a distinct people. They were all mixed people. Okay? Tribes intermixing. They probably was intermixing during the Mississippian times. Like, you really ain't gonna find no thing around this thing. You know what I'm saying? When intermixing has been going on since the Mississippian times. Do you want to throw slavery in that thing? You know what I'm saying? It was gumbo already here. When slavery came, that was the road. Hey man. Jim Crow era. This is the Creole name. This was the Creole name was branded on this group of people. The Indians always considered themselves as Indians, and the Creole description was not a name they liked. Sound like I got auto tunes already. They felt like this was an insult to their race. On the locals would use this as a derogatory term to address the Indians, calling them Creole. This term is still used today by some of the locals, but in most part, the racism has improved. This group of Indians were established on the Pascagoula River and shared a camp with other local Indians and Frenchmen who married our women. Okay? The French people, white people, Europeans. This would come to include some Creek Indians from the Alabama area. So on my mom's side, matrilineal side, right, is Choctaw. This is Sumter County, Livingston, Sumter. You know what I'm saying? York. These are Choctaw lands. It was lands until it was ceded. Right? As a matter of fact, I am a descendant from both sides, the Pascagoula and the Creek Indians. See, on my paternal side, Creek. So my great uncles and stuff, they tell me on Creek. I haven't really got into it so much. I gotta get my mama's side, get the matrilineal side first. You know what I'm saying? That's what, that's how it is. In the matrilineal society, we coming through the mother. The mother. Right? And but my uncle told me I'm Creek and our people come from Atmore, Alabama. I go to Atmore, Alabama there's a reservation there with Indians on them, and they don't look like me. And I'm like, man, where the people at? That you know what I'm saying? Where the dark skin? You know what I'm saying? At least light skin. Cause my mama light skin. Light as long as she could be considered red bone. My mama a red bone. Let me stop. I don't even sound. You know, but yeah, see light skin. But that's yeah. Creek, Muskogee, what up? Atmore, what up? Alabama, stand up. All right, so continue. When, as a matter of fact, I'm just saying we already said that the Pascagoula was a friendly tribe and welcomed other local Indians such as the Chickasaw, the Uwani, and the Companies. These tribes were from the north of the Pascagoula's camp on the Pascagoula River. The Pascagoulas never really talked about their race for fear of removal. So the Pascagoulas never really talked about their race. So if they said they were Native Americans or Indians, they would be removed. So who do they pass as? So their identity was lost or hidden for most of their lives. Okay, maybe if they said they were Choctaw, maybe they would have been removed and not just it's a question mark right there. I can't put my finger on it. It was not until recently that we were able to claim our name without fear. Okay, getting the elders to approve this was a great task as the fear of removal ran so deep. I'm sorry I could go on and on. As soon as we turn our petition into the Bureau of Indian Affairs, we will be able to share our history and supporting documents. This group could be 1,500 to 2,000 people, but because of local politics, we're having a hard time bringing our people together. There are groups, one being ran by a group of white men, and then I think there is another group using our name. We hope to resolve this soon. I could give you some names like the Bangs, Eli, Shoemake, Walton, Garlic, and several other names. The Garlics are the Creek Indians for Alabama. Hmm? Anyway, I have to run out. I gave you enough to think about, and you did. And you did. Let me go back over here. I cannot go back. Go back. All right, so moving forward, man, we got this other video now. This is, them Pascagoula River Tribe trying to, they networking there and they doing a due diligence to be recognized. So this is some of that journey. If you want to take that avenue of being recognized and and taking care of business in that direction. But this video probably will resonate more with you than the other who choose not to. All right. Okay, you see her at the
Okay.
bottom there.
Welcome today to Legacy Business League's Legacy Talks. We
That's
are
the
here to
chairperson
have a
right there.
conversation about Native American relations on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, specifically the Pascagoula River Tribe. Legacy Business League is a minority chamber of commerce, and we established the organization to make sure that we provided a platform for people of all different types of backgrounds. And that is one of the reasons we are building a relationship with Native Americans on the coast, as well as Latinos, people from the LGBTQ community, because we want to make sure that in places where individuals are underrepresented, we are making sure to establish a place where we can talk freely about some topics that are common
use, fair use. Okay, this the views of Legacy Business League does not represent the views here at Brother Lawrence, but you know, we eat the chicken and we spit out the bone. All right.
Obstacles or challenges based on some of the familiar things that we deal with in our race relations, religious relations, and so on. And our goal is to make sure that we are helping each other professionally and personally with our objectives. So we will talk a little bit about how we can help in their initiatives and efforts. But we have some great speakers today, and you're going to be in for a treat. Amanda Ely and I know each other from a past life working at another institution. And I really didn't know that she was there until I read an article in a magazine and made a beeline to her and found that we had some common things that we wanted to be able to express in the community. And she's been involved with the Legacy Business League from our strategic planning session to some of our legacy talks and has represented well. And then we also have Dr. Dixie Haggard from Valdosta State University. He is in Native American Studies, and he has helped Amanda in the Pascagoula River Tribe community in some of the initiatives to receive federal acknowledgement. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
So old buddy Dixon helping the Pascagoula River Tribe to receive acknowledgement. So there you go. So and this can be in your state, in your county, whoever this dude is to help you get recognition. So pay attention.
And so we're going to jump right on into it. And I'm just going to ask Amanda just to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Amanda.
And tell us about your background.
Okay. My name is Amanda Ely, and I am the chairperson of the Pascagoula River Tribe. I actually have, I'm actually a descendant of Creek through my mother's side, and from my dad's side, the Pascagoula River Tribe. So, and like I know Angie from work, and we were able to connect, and she's invited me to do some culture heritage stuff with the Gulf Coast Leadership Program. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I have to tell you that we received so much feedback from your representing, because a lost culture, I think, on the coast. We do a lot of racial conciliation, and it's always usually geared toward Black and white relations. Recently, we had a series of listening sessions, and it was geared toward talking about cultural sensitivity and cultural intelligence. But I know when one of the discussions, if African Americans feel slighted in any way, which we should in some cases, because we've been disenfranchised, your culture has been pretty much wiped out. A complete genocide, and also in the attempt to assimilate that you've lost much of that. So tell us, when you were growing up, were you taught at all about your culture, and what was the nature of your relationships with your family and socially with your friends?
Yes. Well, we really didn't have any Indian traditions or Indian culture, other than always returning to our family for social gatherings. We pretty much stayed within our own community, or within our own family unit, or within the Indian tribe. We would always gather for hunting. The men would always gather for a couple of weeks in the wintertime for hunting, and we would all go and we would stay up there. And that's when we got to spend time with our cousins and stuff like that. But as far as any kind of culture, we have lost all of our culture identity. We just don't have any from what we used to have. And that's because, we were taught by white people in our school, and pretty much they've, we have been Americanized. So we don't really have any culture to say, but keeping our traditional hunting and fishing alive, and also our gatherings of our family and the tribal unit. So that is basically pretty much what we have. We always return to each other, and we never really socialize outside of other than, I mean, I have friends that are, and other friends that I socialize with, but we always return to large gatherings amongst family, and we do that several times a year.
And I think that is common amongst people with similar backgrounds. And why do you think that is?
You know, I don't know. I mean, it's just something that our families have always done. My dad always made sure that we always return back to our roots, and they kept that alive by creating different, Memorial Day, 4th of July weekends and stuff like that. So they've kept that alive and kept that connection and that growth. And some of that growth also was through our community churches that we had, because we had like 9 different churches that were based on wherever the Native Americans had moved to. My uncle actually created all those churches to support the Indian communities. So, but we all still kind of returned to the one area. And a lot of that was done through the churches for a very long time, and also through the community gatherings.
Okay.
I can't tell you why it was like that, other than that we all stayed connected, and it gave us an opportunity to be connected to our family, but to also be somewhere where we all looked alike.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. You told me in a pre-interview about when you went to a festival and you were excited to be around, or your family members were excited to be around because, they weren't looking at you trying to figure out what you were.
Yeah. My dad used to always take us to the Choctaw Indian Fair up in Philadelphia. And, me and my sister went, and my nieces went. And, one of the greatest things about that, and especially for my sister and for me, is that, we were around people that looked like us. We didn't feel like the outsiders, people trying to figure out what we were. And they welcomed us. They thought we were one of them. And there's no better feeling than to feel like that you belong. And that was just such a wonderful opportunity. And I cannot thank my dad enough for encouraging us to continue to make those trips.
Now, you mentioned that you were part Pascagoula River Tribe and part Creek and Cherokee. A little bit about the Pascagoula River Tribe, about the people that you've learned from.
Yeah. Well, the Pascagoula River Tribe is, they've always been a very friendly and fun-loving, gentle people. And, the few people that were left from the Pascagoula River Tribe seem to attract other Native Americans from within this area. One, and I say being my mother, is Creek. We can definitely prove the Creek part. The Cherokee part, can't quite prove it. And that may involve traveling to, North Carolina and trying to pull up some documents. But we definitely know that she was Creek. And so they kind of intermingled with the Pascagoula River Tribe. But there's also some other Native Americans that actually kind of married into our tribe. So, we kind of drew other Native Americans on the coast to that area because of the acceptance and being around other people that were like you. But the Pascagoula River Tribe was very welcoming to all different types of Native Americans.
Now, Professor Haggard, can you tell us a little bit about the tribe and what you've learned in your days?
The tribe, I was asked to come in 2013 and to help with them work on the federal acknowledgement process. And so I had to jump in real quick and learn about who they were. And as a group, they have been in place since at least 200, the year 200,
Wow.
if not farther back. And so there's always been a group of Native Americans living on the west bank of the Pascagoula River since that period of time. And so when the French first showed up, the first group they saw were the Biloxis, who had just recently arrived on the coast. And the Biloxi said, hey, you need.
He said the Biloxi, who had just recently arrived on the coast. Where did the Biloxi come from? To be just arriving.
to go over and talk to the Pascagoulas, and then the Pascagoulas were the ones that introduced them to all the other tribes in the interior. The Choctaw coast, farther back, and so there's always been a group of Native Americans living on the west bank of the Pascagoula River since that period of time. And so when the French first showed up, the first group they saw were the Biloxis, who had just recently arrived on the coast. And the Biloxi said, hey, you need to go over and talk to the Pascagoulas. And then the Pascagoulas were the ones that introduced them to all the other tribes in the interior. The Choctaw Confederacy that was forming, some Mobilians and Inavas and some others that were over in the Mobile area. And that's how the French ended up getting over towards Mobile. They went.
See? Just when you think that these people are not important, but this is their position in his story. They assisted the French to Mobile
Through the Pascagoulas to meet the Choctaws and these other groups. And so they were.
I'm running thing back a long time. Let it play.
Inavas and some others that were over in the Mobile area, and that's how the French ended up getting over towards Mobile. They went through the Pascagoulas to meet the Choctaws and these other groups. And so they were like a very important group. And from the very beginning, they started absorbing other people. The Biloxis moved down there because of they were accepted by the living there. The Pensacola's moved west and some of them joined the Pascagoulas during the early 1700s. And there have been a series of, as you get farther in time, it's not groups of people, but individuals. But there's at least two people that were Choctaw that married in. They were Choctaw and Creek on Creek rolls. And there's at least one family that had a Kaskaskian ancestry, which is from up in Illinois. They were married to Frenchmen. Those people moved down to the coast as part of the French development. And then they married, one person married into the tribe that had that ethnicity. And then there's some other unidentified ethnicities. I think they're probably Pascagoula or Capinas, which were the daughter town of the Pascagoulas that kind of grew out of the Pascagoula tribe that was there when the French arrived. And so that's where they come from. They come out of this, there's this core of Pascagoula, and then there's these other people that kind of in the 1700s and 1800s, even into the 20th century, and became part of the tribe and part of the ethnicity.
And how many do you feel or know? I know that there's probably not an accurate count based on the census. At one point, didn't even have that as an option if you were Indian or Native American. And maybe you can speak a little bit to that. But currently, how many do you feel are still here? And can you tell us anything about any other Native American tribes that may be in the area?
Well, they could be members of the Pascagoula tribe. They would have to be connected to a role that the Office of Indian Affairs, which eventually became the Bureau of Indian Affairs, created in 1903 when they were interviewed to find out if they were descendants of the Choctaws and whether they were owed land because of removal, Indian removal. And that role was about 187 people, if I remember correctly. It's anywhere, I would say anywhere from 600 to 1,500 to 2,000, depending on how many people you actually track down. Now, that's also including away from the Gulf Coast. If you narrow it down, it's going to come down a little bit off that because a number of people have moved away. This is where Amanda was talking about a lot of they stick together. It's really hard for me to tell because not everybody will talk to me because I'm an outsider. So it's at least 600, and it could be as high as 2,000.
Okay.
From my perspective.
And Amanda, I know that it's important to you to maintain your culture and heritage. How do you go about doing that? And tell us a little bit about the initiatives that have happened over the last couple of years.
Okay, so one of the things that we did is we wanted to create a event start people together and introduce them to new cultural traditions since we lost all of ours. So we created a Live Oak historical event, and that is based on the Live Oak Indian School that was based in Van Cleve, Mississippi. We created this event, and it usually happens every year about the end of September, early October. We wanted to, bring in other Native American tribes to learn some of their cultures so that we can start experiencing some different Indian cultures. Eventually, I would like to make a trip up to Oklahoma to find out if there's a committee up there that can help you revive your traditions that you used to have. And so I'd like to make that trip up there. But in the meantime, I've invited Kevin Locke down here at one of our events last year. And he's Lakota from the Standing Rock tribe. And he put on a great show that a lot of our kids got to participate in. And it was a wonderful opportunity for them to see some cultural Indian tradition. And it was just a great opportunity for them to educate themselves in some things that may be possible for us.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things too, our relationship with the Porch Creek Indians, we've got a good relationship with them. And so hopefully in the future, we may see some participation also from them in our event.
Now, Porch Creek Indians are from Atmore, Alabama, correct?
Yes, ma'am, they sure are. As a matter of fact, Eddie Tolis is the one who wrote their petition, and he has read our petition, and he said it was the best petition that he's ever saw.
Okay.
And so he's excited for us to get finished so that we can turn it in, because once we turn this stuff in, it will become knowledge, and we can share this information with people who don't really know our history on the coast.
Haggard, tell us about the petition that Amanda just mentioned. What is she talking about?
Well, what she's talking about is a process that the federal government put in place. The Bureau of Indian Affairs started in 1978, and we need to think of the past as having momentum and mass, and then when it moves through the present and into the future, it brings a lot of, you have to deal with it. It's kind of like a wrecking ball, and wrecking balls can tear down old structures so you can build new structures and what have you. And in American history, we've had a lot of positive things. The Declaration of Independence leads to the Articles of Confederation, which leads to the Constitution, which is a positive thing, which over time was flexible and brought, has expanded the franchise and expanded civil rights. But we have these negative things like slavery, Indian removal, segregation, Jim Crow laws, that type of thing, which the last one was the thing that affected this tribe. This acknowledgement process is like a form of reparations. It's a form of the federal government.
Acknowledgement is a form of reparations. Do y'all agree with that? Do you agree that federal acknowledgement, is a form of reparations?
Looking at these wrecking balls that have come through history, and in this case, like Jim Crow and segregation and the discrimination they faced, this is one of those things where they're trying to correct that, and it's hard to do. It's a hard thing to do, and what they've been denied their identity, and so what we're trying to do is give them back their identity by creating a permanent and a government-to-government relationship between their tribal council the federal government. And that's really different. And so the federal government created this in 1978 because they knew there were these people out there that the history wrecking ball had just swung through. And this is an effort to kind of correct some of that.
Okay, and if you could elaborate on what you mean by, now we I think intellectually know what we mean by really erasing their history, but it was systemic. It was the law. Right. So could you elaborate on how they designated them to either black or white, that they used the Jim Crow laws and even inside their school system? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. They were just not acknowledged as being Indian. The word Creole was used a lot because they knew they really couldn't put them into the basic black-white dichotomy that we have down here in the Deep South. They didn't really fit there. People would try to pigeonhole them in that, but it didn't really work. And so they've been, you know, if you look at some of the federal census records going through the 1800s up to 1940, they're listed as Creole, they're listed as Black, they're listed as mulatto, listed as white. You can see the same person from one census to the next being identified as one thing or another, depending on what that white person is that's actually assessing them. And then finally in 1940, they're able to be listed as Indian. And that's the last records that we get to look at, because the rest are, I think we don't get the 1950s till 2022. And so that right there shows you that there is this outside group trying to label them, and they're having a problem labeling them. And then when it comes to 1918, the state of Mississippi seemed to realize that there's this group of people down here on the coast. They could not go to the African American school. They could not go to the white school. And so they created and people of other races not covered within the segregation laws, so to create schools for them. So they had this small schools created. The tribe actually built the building and donated the land for it, and they're put into that school. What's different about them is they could not go to the 12th grade. They could go to the 8th grade. African American students had a high school. The white students had a high school. The Native people did not have a high school. So segregation really hit them hard. And it's different from what we think of when we tend to think of Jim Crow and the legacy of Jim Crow. The wrecking ball came through on them in a different way. And so they're still dealing with this. And when I'm probably telling you something you already know, but when we look at current situations and we look at education matters, okay? And education leads to economic opportunity, and economic opportunity leads to healthcare. And healthcare matters because you need to been denied all of that because of the way they were segregated and pushed to the side.
Okay, and they were segregated because there was a movement to.
So you got somebody who was of the other race, right? Who know the system and quite frankly a program or programs to help you get your identity back. Do you trust him, Taylor? Or do you not knock him because he's of the race?
At one point get rid of the words Creole, mulatto. They didn't have the Native American option, and so they had to either become Black or white. If they hit Black, why couldn't they go to the Black schools?
Well, because the African Americans trustee school wouldn't let them go because they weren't African American. They're part of that community. Because the trustees were put in, that's what they were, and that was the African American community protecting its community. Okay. And so this is all the schools had their own boards of trustees that came out of their community that worked with the county to run the schools. And so that's where that comes from. It's part of where they were, the way it was created. And this is the insidious nature of Jim Crow, is that it actually pitted two different ethnicities, two different minorities against each other. And the white sat on the outside. That creates part of the problem of what they were dealing with.
Wow.
And you mentioned the labeling. Between 1900 and 1940, there was a period of time where white senators went to and forced the Census Bureau to label people either Black or white. They got rid of the mulatto category. They weren't allowed to use the Creole category. What was interesting, takers still use the Creole category. So they're not supposed to be doing that, but yet they're doing that. That there tells you, that's another piece of information for me as a historian. Look at it, say, yeah, that means they're a third group. And that's important to Mississippi history. It's important to the Pascagoula River tribe, but it's important to understand in Southern history that we have a very, very complicated history. It's different from the rest of the country because this is the only place where Africa, North America, and Europe all came together. And we created something that you don't see in the rest of the country.
Nope.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, Amanda, you are on the tribal council. Tell us a little bit about that, and tell us a little bit about the efforts that you've made in terms of making sure that the Live Oak School has been honored and preserved for its historical value?
So I've been on the council since 19. I had a couple of little breaks in between that, but what we did is we went and got a historical marker for the Live Oak Indian School and had it placed. It took us a little while to get it there because we didn't go through the proper channels just because we just didn't know. But we actually placed that last year and it's up there. And it's really kind of opened up the door for a lot of people to be proud of who they are and where they're from. A lot of times when people have been researching their history, they see things like Black, mulatto, Creole, and they don't understand or think back in that time of what history was like. You know, you weren't allowed to be labeled a certain thing, so they panic. And because let's face it, a lot of us are white passing, and they panic, and so you know they don't want to really talk about that. Well, the historical marker and the ourselves has created an open opportunity for communication amongst the elders and the people who don't understand the history of the past in the Jim Crow era. So we see more and more people, stepping out of their comfort zone to acknowledge that they are Native American. And in 1940 was the first census taking year that our people were able to say who they were, and when they were able to write Indian on the census record. And that was a huge step for us. And also, you know, the Pascagoula River Tribe and the historical marker at the Live Oak Indian School and the Live Oak historical event that we do every year is also another huge step for opening doors and breaking down barriers for our people to be proud of who they are.
And that's why I'm so glad that we've met and that we can have a platform conversation so we can help in that. I think that that's the commonality that I was talking about, is that sometimes, you know, our past has been weaponized and that we can't embrace it when we really are embracing the adversity of a people who have overcome systemic, you know, laws that have were designed to oppress. And so, you know, being able to have you on today and talk about the fact that you have these festivals, and I would love to ride up and see the school, just to even know that it exists and that that you have such a rich culture here still in Van Cleve. You know, you have people owning businesses. We want to talk about that in a second, but there's a couple of things that you just said in that last little thing that I want to make sure that people know that, you know, the school's still there. It's concrete building, 2 rooms, but it wasn't necessarily a school where you learned your language or that you learned your culture, right? Dr. Haggard can talk about that, and Armanda, you know, that's been lost, the language and some of the traditions, right?
Well, yeah, they were not taught anything about Native American history, and what they were taught was the basic reading, writing, arithmetic kind of thing, and they were not allowed to go beyond the 8th grade, and so there was a limitation on where they could go and what they could do, and the teachers, and in some of the records I've looked at, the teachers knew they were teaching Native Americans. They knew that, but they weren't. The curriculum didn't allow for that. And the official record is that the only Indians in Mississippi were the Mississippi Band of Choctaws up near Philadelphia, and so there was nothing to teach that to them. Mm-hmm. And as Amanda pointed out, a lot of the people that in the tribe just this because it was not something you talked about. It was not something that was made public. And so that's going to cause you to lose the continuity with whatever traditions you had in the past. And now, you know, in trying to trace this and look in the 19th century, you can't, it's hard to see because there's not a written record, because they're not a literate society leaving a written record. And the few non-natives that they encountered didn't want to write about them. So it's really hard to kind of find these pieces as you go through. The genealogy kind of restores that, and then the records that the tribe created when they were interviewed by the Office of Indian Affairs in 1902 help fill in some of those gaps. And I've tried to fill in some gaps that have taken place since 1968 by doing interviews with, I believe, more than 75 people to
Oh,
try
wow.
to recover what's happened in the lifespans of the people I've interviewed. I started with Amanda's father, because he went back to the old. He actually went up to the Live Oak Pond School, not the Live Oak School. He was in the for a couple years. He was in the wooden building that was in a different location.
Okay.
And so I started with him and his brother James Ely, who still lives in Van Cleve, and went forward from there. So I've got all these different people, and the stories they tell are amazing. Although, like I was telling you before, that when I read some of this stuff, some of it's a little depressing, or more than a little depressing, when you read the hardships and really the discrimination that they faced. And it was not something you could fight back with. Again, this is where acknowledgement kind of comes back in. It gives them the ability to say, yes, we are Indians. The federal government says we are Indians.
I understand.
You know, I was, and I don't mean to interject here, but when I was talking to my uncle about a lot of the racism stuff that's going on in today's time, and I asked him, I was like, well, what about, my father? How did that work out for him? And he told me, he said, if my grandfather was in a store checking out something or buying something and a white man came in, he would have to step back and let the white man go ahead of him. And he didn't really say anything about that. He just did what he had to do, got his stuff, and left. But the one thing that he would not allow is that the property that he owned, that was his property. And, if someone came on his property wanting to do anything or contact any of his kids or anything, he was, that was the one place that he had control.
Yeah.
And so that's why land was so important to my dad and to his father, because it was the one place that was theirs, and they had all the control of what went on in that area.
That is so interesting. I know in the pre-interview, you all mentioned some. I mean, can you tell us what?
Well, the mounds that are down, Graveline's Mound, and there was another mound that was in Ocean Springs that got leveled for construction in the decades ago. But the mounds that were on the Pascagoula River are the mounds of her ancestors, and the fact that there's mounds there tells you there was a significant ceremonial town there, because that's what develops around the mounds. They're part of a culture that actually was connected to the east, not so much to the west, but to the east, back to Mobile and Pensacola, that all the way over to a little bit beyond Pensacola. And they all shared a common culture. There was probably a lot of trade and communication with them. And then there was connections with the interior, with some of the people that became known as Choctaws later on, and some of the people that became known as Creeks later on. But those mounds signify the importance of the Pascagoulas and also the Capinas living on the Pascagoula River. And there the Pascagoula River had been plowed down back in the early 20th and middle of the 20th century.
There we go.
The Mississippi and the county, Jackson County, used that as fill to build roads.
Oh, wow.
And the problem with that is people were buried in those things, so that in
That was
essence,
my next question. What is the significance of a mound? I mean, was it built for sort of sacrificial issues? I mean, like what? I mean,
they're built up over time, layer by layer. Usually, the chiefs are buried in the mounds, and then the chief will live on top of the mound. They will, when he dies, they will put the body in there, burn the building down, then put another layer to cap it and go up. Although there are some funeral mounds that are built where they're built specifically just to bury a lot of people in them. I'm not that familiar with what the archaeology on the Pascagoula River, but that's not really going to help us in our process. But that's one of the things you would do. And they serve ceremonial purposes. They serve like living spaces for the leaders, but also places where religious ceremonies would take place. They represent this world, and getting into a lot of deep details of this, they represent this world, and the native people in the Southeast thought of the world above, the world here, and the world below, and that there's a spiritual connection between them. Mm-hmm. And those would have been special points for that connection between the world above and the world below. So yeah, it had very, very significant religious and cultural importance to these people. And in the past, drowned to protect those mounds, like some of the mounds were protected by the creeks in Oklahoma, protected mounds in Macon, Georgia, because they knew about them. This tribe wasn't recognized. Once they get acknowledgement, some of that stuff they're going to be able to lay claim to, because they come out of that culture. So there's something there. The sad part is some of those mounds are gone, and and that's the sad part of it.
Well, that helps me. I still have one more question for Amanda, but I think we should segue into the tribal federal acknowledgement through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, because that, let me ask you, if in the event you had that designation, would that have allowed you to help protect something like the mounds?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that at that point, once you have that federal relationship, you can call them, you can use the resources of the government to protect cultural resources. The other thing is you can use the government to collect stuff that has been taken out of the mounds and put it, you can bring it back and have it put here. Depending, right, there's a lot of, that's the one of the big advantages of getting acknowledgement, is that then you get the federal government, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, on your side to protect your cultural heritage, that type of thing.
Okay.
So that
So just a broad overview of what that is, the acknowledgement, and why would anyone want that? And I mean, you've mentioned some reasons, but just want to make sure that we flesh that out.
The first thing you have to remember about the acknowledgement process, you're bringing the government back into your lives. So you're actually, it's almost a recolonization effort, because you're saying, yes, we want you involved. But then in this case, you're looking at a tribe that has had to suffer discrimination because there's a refusal to acknowledge who they are and what that means to the community. And so this will help them by organizing that principle. And so there's a process we have to go through that's arduous and bureaucratic. Criteria we have to prove, and the first criteria has 7 sub criteria, and it's very complicated. Yes, and you have to document everything that you state, and we have to give copies of every document we have with the petition. And the petition I've written so far is 240 some pages, right, Amanda? And
Yes.
And that's single space. That's not double spaced. So it's a substantial undertaking that the tribe undertook, and they asked me to come in and help them with it. And acknowledgement in the long run will help them with securing better education for their children, securing out of that better economic opportunities, and certainly better health care. They won't get straight up money or anything like that directly from the federal government, but they will get assistance in acquiring those, and potentially in acquiring grants, because once we're real. Without that, it's hard to get that kind of stuff.
I see. And even also business opportunities, right? There's like an example of maybe setting up a gas station and being able to charge lower rates, and so therefore.
Right. That's the key. Where she talked about land and the desire to protect land, they have tried to hold on to land that they've had. They've even went through their process in the middle of the 19th century of claiming homesteads and what have you. There's at least 3 major sections of 600 acres of land that were originally all Native American that has eventually over time been whittled away from them. A lot of it through failure to pay taxes, because a lot of the people were too poor to pay the taxes or didn't know to pay the taxes, especially in the early 20th century. But that process, if they can create a land base, there's a way to use the land base. They would take the land, put it in trust. The federal government, therefore, it can never be taken away from them, never can be sold. State and local taxes, state and local laws don't apply to that land base. That becomes a reservation, okay? And it doesn't have to be all connected. And so that right there would be the launching pad of where you go. What do you think about? Truck stop where they don't have to pay the extra taxes on gas. That would be something you have. There's other things like tobacco taxes that they don't have to pay, and other sales taxes just in general that you would not necessarily apply on the reservation. You can build around it, okay? A lot of people automatically think of casinos, but that's just one path.
Amanda, why is this important to you and possibly to the others in your community?
Well, for me, it's basically about identity. So that's the most important thing to me. As far as economic development, I'm not sure where we'll go with that. I'm sure we'll have to create can help us with that. I'm not sure if I'm the person for that. But yeah, what the thing is I want to open up more opportunities for our people to get a better education. In all honesty, my dad had an 8th grade education, and his health suffered based on the jobs that he had to take to raise his family. So we want to see some more opportunities for our people. I wish I had more opportunities to go back to school at my age. I just don't know that it's financially feasible right now. So, but we're looking for, one of the things about the Live Oak historical event, we do give out scholarships to our people, to our children. It may not be much, but it may help them buy books. Every little bit counts.
Let me add into that.
That's right. When you're in college, them books come. New thick ass book, but that thing about $600. Something you ain't gonna even read. You only gonna read 2 chapters at the semester.
When you talk about education, it is pretty much a proven thing that if you have one generation gets a certain level of education, the next generation usually has a hard time going beyond more than one level above that. Okay. And so when you go back, this is again the wrecking ball of history. If you go back and look, they were denied anything beyond the 8th grade. So if they actually got through to the 8th grade, you're really looking at that next generation. They're very much limited to probably, a 12th grade education, at best a 2-year college education, if they really pushed hard. And there are people in the tribe that have done that. But that legacy goes forward. A lot of people, desegregation occurred in 1968. Everything's rosy. Not. There is this continuing legacy that flows through, and you have to recognize that legacy. And so that a lot of people, Jim Crow's in the past. No, it's not. It's still here because the people that experienced it are still alive, and then their children are still alive because that affected their children.
That's right. We are just one generation removed. I just don't think that people realize how people are still alive that experience the disenfranchisement of Jim Crow, and we're one generation removed from that. It's just the effects are still very much alive today, and I am finding in talking to other cultures very similar instances where people just don't want to talk about it. They just want to move on. They've assimilated in a way where they fit in, but proud to know that those that want to come out large and in charge and celebrate their heritage and culture. You mentioned, being white passing. Again, like I said, we work together. I don't know that I would have ever looked at you and thought Native American until I saw the article. And you said that even after that article came out, some people.
That's because you thought the Native Americans look like you. But we still confused.
Well, tell us about that experience when they actually identified you as being Native American.
Well, it was kind of strange because, some of the white people started treating me a little bit different, but then also the Black people started treating me different. Sometimes the Black people were nicer to me because they realized that I was a person of color. And then the white people realized that, hey, she's not white. So we've been tricked. So,
right.
And that's the truth. Like, if you're not white, you got some kind of color to you. So when we talk about people of color, we're talking about everybody that's not white.
Are they? Yeah, that there was some that had a tendency to make derogatory statements that couldn't.
Dixon agreeing with that.
Not at all. Like I talk about racial. Yeah. So our goal is really racial reconciliation or sensitivity or intelligence, as the co-founder Cuba Scott says. And that's it starts with these conversations and understanding. And I even asked you before we started yesterday, should I say Indian? Should I say Native American? What are your thoughts on that? For me, Black versus African American, you know, what should we say?
Well, I mean, I just prefer Indian. I think most of my family just prefer Indian. You know, we're just to have some identity and not have someone select that identity for us. So
But
I would,
see, well, we also fail to realize that Indian, whatever you try to say, Indian, uh, it's not our original name. It's not what we called ourselves before the European arrival, right? So, what was the Aboriginal name of who the Pascagoulas were?
Okay, and then so I'll end by asking both of you, how can we help? How can we help in your efforts to celebrate your heritage and culture with through the Live Oak Festival, or the recognition with the school, or in the efforts with the federal grant? We'll start with you, Dr. Haggard.
Well, I think help is just by supporting the fact that they are native. You're doing this right now, okay? This something that she can take and load up into an appendices and say, yes, we were interviewed based on our ethnicity, and you are acknowledging that the people are Indian. So, but just by doing this interview, I think the biggest issue for acknowledgement for me is that the other people, the non-natives, say, yes, we accept that you are Indian, that we accept you for who you say you are. I can see it because I've seen the historical record. They are who they say they are.
Sure.
Okay. But that's the one thing y'all can do. The other thing is through your organization, you could partner with them in the future to help them find paths for improving educational opportunity, find paths for finding economic opportunity, find paths for improving healthcare. I think, this is where Amanda just said, she's not sure she's up to this. This is where, again, our legacy is, there's not a lot of people in the tribe of a certain age the experience doing a lot. And so they do need outside non-native help, but it needs to be help where they're asking for it as opposed to being dictated to. And there is always and this is nationwide, Native people have resources. In this case, their resource is their identity. And so there's always non-natives that will hang around the fringes that try to take advantage of that. That would be another thing that an organization like yours can do to kind of help protect, is identify, yes, these people are native and this is what they want, by opening these paths of communication. So,
Oh, wow. I think we can do that. I think we can help in that effort. Amanda, I'll end with you.
okay. Well, show up for our events, show support and encouragement by attending some of our things or supporting us. We have a long way to go. We're not, but we will get there. And we will be looking for resources and people, to come on board and help us develop a plan to help our people reach a certain level of business opportunities. Now we do have some businesses. My uncle has a concrete company, which is Ely Foundation. I have a cousin. She has a Crazy Sisters Catfish House in Bankley, Mississippi. It works and it's really good. So,
Okay.
So there's, we are all kind of learning, I guess you would say. We're not used to having those type of opportunities. So, a lot of us are achieving these things late in life as we grow and mature and learn to educate ourselves. But as we move forward and we do receive recognition, we are and some help, maybe even putting together some committees to help us figure out where do we go from here? What can we do to grow our economic plan and development so that we can, support our people and offer them some different opportunities than what we had. It may not happen for me, but for my nieces or other tribes members, their children, I want to see opportunities for them, and I want to see them actually come on board and be a part of something that's growing, that's going to be important to the Gulf Coast. I see us contributing to the Gulf Coast in a way like no other way that we've ever seen before. I see us doing something positive. And I see us doing it with with committees like yours. I can't stress the importance of how important it's going to be for us to get good people on board to help us.
Well, it's interesting you say that because it's really specifically within our platform, the wraparound services for business development, Heritage Global Group, which is the part of the arm that Kiva Scott runs, is developed specifically to help people in the efforts that you're talking about. In that when they aren't quite sure where to go, what direction to go into, she stands up experts in finance, marketing, and just a plethora of different areas, and take that one business or organization and helps them, from start to finish, allowing toolkits and resources and such. So we definitely would like to see how we can help with that. And I know that you've been very engaged in our virtual talks and again, like I said, in our planning session. So we do appreciate that. And as far as the small businesses, we're standing up a minority business, and so we want to make sure that we list them. Again, in working with someone with another background, they want to be able to promote it as a business that's owned by a particular race or culture, but then it's also like, do we really want to do that? I just happen to be, Black, or I just happen to be Latino or Native American. But it's important, business to business, being able to support one another for sustainability purposes. We want to be able to highlight it. So you've given me those names, and I would love to be able to post them. And so that's how we're going to be able to help as well.
Thank
you.
you.
Any last words?
Hey, look, I appreciate you guys having us on here. I've enjoyed every one of the talk series.
No disrespect, but yeah, we do got last words. Do your genealogy and figure out who your people are and how they fit in his story. That's it. And for me, I aim to document that journey, bring it to y'all to make it a little bit easier, a little bit clearer on how we approach the situation, how we approach the system, and getting back what's ours, which is land, right? Connecting with family and owning stuff. Those are the people that make the most money, the owners. So if you're not out here owning land, owning establishments, businesses, hospitals, military, everything. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, man, we're going to leave it like that. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Those who are live right now, appreciate you tuning in. I even appreciate those who are going to catch this thing on a playback. Stay tuned now, because I am coming back on around about 12 o'clock noon Central Standard Time. And I got the big bro coming through, John Keaton, you know what I'm saying, running from mayor to all the way being the deputy of economic development in the city of Jackson, Mississippi. Big talks coming up, man. I'm gonna ask him a few questions. I personally know him, so we might, reminisce back in old times, and we're gonna keep the vibes high, right? And and hopefully we you some substance that you can put in your, shrimp and grits. So Brother Lawrence 228, we out this thing. Peace.